I will always remember the burning sensation of the sedation medication entering my bloodstream as I lay on the bed in an emergency room that day. The feeling of a warm, heavy blanket pulling me under. And the truth is, it was a place I wished I could stay forever. See, 2 hours before this moment, I'd had an anxiety breakdown in my office, which came about as a result of unchecked burnout, which I'd been in for not just a few months, but actually probably the past 2 or 3 years prior to that moment. And despite it being one of the most challenging times of my life, this burnout breakdown was the final wake-up call that I needed to truly start to wake up to the fact that I was living so far from who I truly am, so far outside of myself. There were lots of signs, but I was so disconnected from myself that I didn't even notice these wake-up calls. One of it being having a gun pushed into my side and my life being threatened in the middle of a carjacking. And the very next morning, less than 12 hours after this incident, me sitting at my laptop trying to get an urgent document done that was due for something that day. Or the other wake-up call where I was off hiking on a 6-day, multi-day hike. My attempt to get away from it all and take a pause and breathe and immerse myself in nature. And halfway through this hike where there was no cell phone reception, suddenly my cell phone beeped and I start looking at my phone and see there's so much issues that need resolution and I'm stuck here and I can't do anything about it. And I burst out crying in the middle of this mountain when I'm actually meant to be away taking a pause and a break from it all. And the other time when I flung my phone at the back wall of the office, just as a volcano of anger and rage and frustration erupted from me in the middle of a phone conversation. Or the time just a few months prior to this actual breakdown when I was on my way back to the office but got a message that some urgent documents were needed and it couldn't wait for me to drive back to the office for an hour. So I stopped at a restaurant very quickly to send an email because I'd run my battery down and I needed to plug in somewhere. And what started out as a quick email needing to be sent at 3:45 in the afternoon very quickly turned into a maelstrom of getting deep into so many urgent things that needed sorting. And the next time I looked up at the clock, it was after 7 in the evening, dark outside, and the restaurant I was sitting in had filled with people, and I hadn't even noticed a thing. And then that night, I still went home and worked through the night again. And the truth is, these were all ways in which I didn't recognize that this is very unhealthy. This is not a way to live. I was trapped in my own fear, not being able to see it all clearly because I was so focused in on just making this career work. And in all of that, ignoring what was going on with me. I had physical, mental, emotional symptoms, and the physical symptoms included having constant headaches. I had a migraine once a week. I didn't sleep very well as a result of an overwhelming number of thoughts keeping me awake at night. I lived on coffee as a stimulant, caffeine being the stimulant just to keep me going through the day. I probably only ate one meal a day, actually. And I had IBS. I was overweight because there was so much cortisol in my system, my body couldn't process food properly. And mentally, I was highly strung. I was constantly planning ahead and always on edge, but always trying to stay on top of things I needed to attend to. And emotionally, a constant feeling of anxiety buzzing inside the pit of my stomach. And actually the extension of that is I was emotionally disconnected. I tried really hard to stay in connection with my friends and my family. But often when I was sitting with them, I'd be far away in my thoughts, already planning ahead for stuff I needed to work on. So my body was there, but mentally I was not. Emotionally, I was disconnected. And I had many moments, during this extended period of burnout where I would cry, just burst out crying. I'd cry on my way to work in the traffic. I'd cry in the bathroom cubicle after a meeting. I'd cry at night sitting at my laptop working, frantically trying to get documents out, and the sheer overwhelm and not being able to stay on top of it. It built up and the tears wouldn't ever stop. I just about managed to hold myself together at work. And so these were all of the ways in which I was not in a good place. But my fear of making a decision that would help me get out of it wasn't even available to me because I didn't even notice what was happening with me until the day of the breakdown. And I remember as I fell down in the office that day, the only words I could eventually say after sobbing uncontrollably for a long time was, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. I call it my meltdown mantra, because on mantras, things we keep repeating to ourselves. It was the words I needed to hear myself say out loud. I went into therapy after the breakdown. I had a psychologist work with me for 3 months. And I got to take a real good look at what had happened here. How had I ended up in a place where I'd so tuned out my own voice, what was going on inside of me, that I didn't notice I was in this state. And so during those months of therapy and also doing some of my own research and working and sitting with myself, I got to truly see how I'd arrived in this place, how some of the agreements I made with myself as a child, as a little girl, that I was determined that I would have a voice in the world. Because as a little girl, I felt very shut down. I grew up with lots of rules and lots of parameters around us, quite strict upbringing. And so in my adult years, I really wanted to feel like I have a voice. I have a right to say things and to be who I am, my own self. But it became my way of being. The determination to always try to have a voice in the room meant I pushed so hard to keep up with that persona. So I got to take a real, not just look, but process it and work with it and start to reframe some of these things for myself and shift the way I am. I didn't get a bypass and a shortcut to the healing on this one. Most people know me as someone who does things by layers. Well, I did this one by layers. The only way out of this experience was through. I had to make my way through the pain, through the anger, through the fear, through the distrust, through betrayal, And I had to work my way through forgiveness. Forgiveness was eventually something I came to see I granted to myself as part of my healing journey, because I had actually betrayed myself quite severely during that time. And so forgiveness was something I really worked with, and it wasn't so much about the other people. It was I needed to forgive myself for how I treated myself during that time. And vulnerability. I call it my ride or die companion. Because if there's one thing I needed to befriend, was learning to ask for support and help. Being raw and open, letting people see me without pretending that I was anything other than who I am. Getting real. But I will admit, initially, becoming vulnerable was not easy work for me. When you're accustomed to protecting yourself and presenting a certain curated image of yourself to the world, when you eventually strip away all those layers and you're prepared to show who you truly are, it's quite unnerving initially. And now I'm really grateful that I get to live from this space of absolute clarity of my internal voice, my guidance on the inside, directing my path. I no longer tune out that voice. And in fact, I've turned down the volume on the other conditioned voices in my head. Definitely on fear, on playing small, on pleasing people, on not having boundaries. I only know one way how to live now, and that is vulnerably raw, open-hearted, and absolutely choosing myself. And it's a really soft place to live. And so, yeah, now I love sharing the story of not just what happened during the breakdown and the burnout and all of that, because I believe that was just a catalyst to bring me into my awareness, my actual wake-up call. But now, more than anything, I am living in the experience of someone who has healed. And I love sharing that part of my story, because I think it is such an important part. So I often think, why do I tell these stories? What's the point? Sometimes I do think, maybe someone needed to hear this today. Maybe someone needed to take a good old look inside at themselves and say, maybe I haven't been listening to my internal voice so much, right? And if my sharing of the story does that, I'm so grateful, because it's already worked for me. And if it works for you listening, that's just so beautiful. For me, it's a reference to a quote I read by an author, Laurie Buchanan. She said, "Whatever you are not changing, you are choosing." There's such truth to that, such depth. So now, I choose to live much lighter, much more open-hearted in the world, and absolutely listening to my inner voice, the part of me that is soul, that came here to have a human experience, but absolutely has an incredible all-knowing guidance system. I trust that.